Our bonus block is going to be the pinwheel. It is one of the easiest blocks, but also one of the hardest blocks. And I will explain that as we go. Because we want to end up with a 12 1/2 inch block, and it is made up of fourths, we are going to cut our squares to 7 1/2. Remember, when we're working with triangles, especially half square triangles, we want to cut our fabric larger than we need. So we're going to cut these to 7 1/2 inches. And you'll need to have 2 of your light color and 2 of your dark color. Okay, just like we did with our other half square triangle blocks, we are going to draw a diagonal line from corner to corner on our 2 light colored blocks. So there's 1 and 2. And then we will stitch a 1/4 inch on either side of those blocks, just like we did with our other half square triangle blocks. Okay, remember, when we press these, we want to set our seam, and then we are going to, here's our line of stitching. We're going to fold back the dark on that line of stitching and finger press it in place, and then press with the iron. And then we will flip the piece back out of the way and do the same thing with the other side of that dark. Flip it back, finger press it, and apply the iron. And then we will split those blocks along our drawn line on the diagonal. Right down that diagonal line. Splitting it right down that diagonal line, in between the rows of stitching, and we get our 4 pieces that will make up our pinwheel. So here are our 4 pieces. You can see how simple that was. Now we're going to get to the more challenging part. We need to stitch these together. We will fold like this and stitch down this seam. If you get them mixed up, they'll end up backwards. So let's very quickly stitch these, and then we'll talk about matching the points in the center. Now, as I sewed these together, I made sure to nest the seams. So I made sure this seam stayed toward my dark color and this seam stayed toward my dark color. When I attached them, I wiggled those seams so that they nested together. And then I stitched. The result is a block with the point not quite to the edge. And that's really important because that's where we will join them to get our perfect pinwheel points. But first I need to press these. And if we look at the back, we will see that they are kind of trying to go in opposite directions already. This one is wanting to go this way, and this one's wanting to go this way. So that's how I'm going to press them. Okay, here they are, all pressed. You can see that on this one I pressed this way, and on this one I pressed this way, just the way that the seams wanted to go. Now, you notice that there's a lot of bulk right here in this intersection. So I'm going to nip off these little extra points, these little dog ear points. I'm just going to snip those off. That will eliminate some of that bulk in the intersection, and it will make us easier for us to match up the seams and get a perfect block. Okay, here is the part of the pinwheel block that so many people struggle with. Getting these points to line up exactly. But I want you to really take a look at these seams and what is going on, and hopefully that is clear to you. But you can see that this one, the black fabric is above the gray fabric, and on this one the black fabric is above the gray fabric. That is going to allow us to nest those seams perfectly, and we are going to use one straight pin to help us make sure those points line up. Okay, to match these points, we're going to insert a pin in the back and have it come out right at that point. Can you see it there? And then I'm going to take the other piece and I am going to stab the pin right in the point there. Stab the pin right in the point there, so that the pin is just standing up. I'm going to align the edges to make them as straight and neat as I can. My pin is still in place here. Now, I am going to wiggle, 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 until I feel those seams lock together. And you can see it here, how my seams are now nested together. I'm going to turn the pin just slightly and just place it off to one side, just to hold that there, one pin. Now I'm going to start sewing along the edge up to the pin, remove the pin and keep going, and I should have a perfect match. Okay, so I'm sewing my seam and I'm approaching that pin. As I get closer, I'm going to remove the pin and use my finger to hold that fabric in place. I'm going to sew right through that intersection and continue down my seam. Okay, I made a mistake, and I could have just thrown away that video and started with a new one and not shown you what happens when you make a mistake. But we are all human and we all make mistakes. And you need to realize that you are not going to be perfect when you are piecing these blocks. I skipped a step. We need to trim from that point out to the edge so that we have a 1/4 inch seam along there. And that's the step that I skipped. So we need to go back and do that. Now, it's really easy to say, oh, this has to be 1/4 inch, and not worry about keeping this line straight. But we need to make sure that it is straight. So I am going to place the 7-inch mark right on this center piecing line. And I'm going to place the 1/4 inch mark right where that point is, where those fabrics meet. And then I'm going to trim. And you can see that my seam allowance that I'm going to trim is not even the whole way. And that's why I had to make sure I lined up on a straight seam. Okay, now that they have been trimmed, I can do my same trick with the straight pin in the intersection and sew them together. If you will look from our previous pressing, we already have our seams going around this way. Now all of my seams are pressed flat, but I still have this big lump in the center that I need to get rid of. I can flatten that by removing these few little stitches. Okay, I have removed those few stitches. Hopefully you can see that they're gone. And now I